Welcome to the channel, everybody. Appreciate you coming and checking it out. And if you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. Really do appreciate that. What we got for you today is we have a story from a viewer from his grandmother in the 1950s in southern Florida. So before we get into his account, I'm going to go ahead and show you the area really quick. He talks about Lake Okeechobee. That's Lake Okeechobee right there. He'll talk about Clewiston. Right there is Clewiston, as you guys can see. Now remember, guys, this is 2022 imagery. He's talking about a time in 1950s when this was a lot different in this area. But I still want to show you guys from basically Clewiston down to the area where he's talking about is right in here. Isn't very far at all. And if you go past that into the Big Cypress National Preserve and the Everglades National Park down through there, look at all this area and all this swamp and all the land that's here for a creature. So people think, oh, Florida, it's all crowded, it's all crowded. Yeah, it's crowded over here. That's for sure. But if you just move on over just a little bit, there's a lot of land down there still for a creature, a skunk ape slash MOSSMAN slash Bigfoot creature to be hanging out and doing its thing down there. I mean, this area holds panthers, it holds black bears, all kinds of wildlife. So I just wanted to go ahead and show you guys the area, and we will get to the account. Let's do it. Now, before we get into the encounter, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little backstory with an email that he sent me. So let's get to it. Hi again, Will. I spoke to my mom, and she tells me one of the places her mother, my grandmother, used to take the troop camping was right near Big Cypress Indian Reservation, located a bit south of Clewiston, Florida. She has no idea of the exact locations, but it was right in that area. There were many places to go close to home. As the story goes, Vera Jane, my grandmother, and her mother, my great-grandmother, used to drive around scoping out places to go camping. There were lots of good places to go in that area of Florida. Apparently, they met up with a forest ranger, maybe a park ranger, and he suggested a nice place near the reservation that had bathrooms, outhouses, and running water. She would bounce the troop in different areas on pick weekends, and they would all go out camping. My mom blocked this incident out, but she does remember camping a few times at the place with an outhouse. Now, as I will say, many changes have occurred since the 1950s. That bathroom may be gone now, and the whole area may have been upgraded since. If you look up Big Cypress Indian Reservation near Clewiston, you will see many forested areas still there with trails leading into those areas. Maybe it is the reservation, as they now have built it up into a tourist park. I think this encounter deserves to be dedicated to my grandmother, Vera Jane. She was a good mother and grandmother, and was very loved by the community, and is missed to this day. She had many friends, and maybe with you telling this, someone will come out and give a bit more information. I am sure the topography has changed around Clewiston, Florida, but back then it was sure to be different. I do know it was near Lake Okeechobee. The MOSSMAN in Florida. It was first called the MOSSMAN because it was considered covered in moss. Then it became the skunk ape. My grandmother told my sister and I this encounter, and my grandmother was not one to make up stories. She told us this first in the late 1970s. My mother doesn't remember it, as she was probably so scared she blocked it out. My mother refuses to accept the story to this day. As for my grandmother, later in years, she came down with dementia. Horrible way to go. As I was taking care of her before the nursing home ordeal, she had a major bout of sundowners and became unruly until I asked her to tell me the MOSSMAN story again. She became completely lucid, and not a single sign of Alzheimer's came back the rest of the evening. Mind you, I needed to take her mind back to an earlier period of her life to reduce her craziness. As she told it with such clarity, you would never know she had dementia. And she told it exactly as she did to me and my sister decades before. She was the master of a Brownie Troupe that my mother was part of. My mother was very young, maybe about 10 years old. This took place around 1957 near Clewiston, Florida. While camping, all the girls needed to go potty after dinner around 6 p.m. By that time in winter, it had started to get dark already. My grandmother led the girls to the supplied outhouse in the camping area. It had electricity, so there was a light on at all times. As the lines to the toilets were forming, there was a commotion, very loud, coming from the woods right next to the outhouse. Suddenly, from out of the woods stepped a very hairy man, covered in what looked like moss, about 7 foot tall, and all the girls screamed. My grandmother, on her toes, immediately grabbed the closest thing, a lead pipe that was being used to construct or repair the bathroom at the time, and whacked this creature with all her might. She kept going and going. She kept hitting it as it screamed guttural screams and ran back into the woods. All the girls were in insanity mode. Some even peed themselves, as my grandmother did as well. Everybody wanted to go home. My grandmother calmed everyone down and told them that it wouldn't be back, as she actually drew blood on the creature. A bloody mess was all around the lavatory area. They went back to the campsite and created a huge fire. The local ranger caught wind of the incident and came out immediately. He took my grandmother aside and told her to pack up and get out of there. He explained that a month earlier there was a Boy Scout troop coming there, and one of the boys went missing with his camera, a Brownie camera, LOL, a well-known camera back in those days. He told the story. As a search party went through the next morning looking for the young boy, the only thing found was his camera. Nothing else. The pictures were developed, and the last picture taken was a flash creature that had its hand around its boot, dragging him away. The picture was hushed up, and so was the incident. The troop under my grandmother packed up quickly and left. My grandmother, after retelling her encounter, was completely fine the rest of the night after she retold the story. I figured that her encounter with the MOSSMAN left a serious impression on her. My mother remembers nothing of the incident. I have no idea what happened about the Boy Scout. I may surmise that everything was hushed up in those days to keep the public from hearing about it. As an aside, while traveling down Devil's Garden Road in an old station wagon in the early 80s in the same area, my sister and I saw something huge leaning against the tree on the side of the road. We pleaded for Mom to turn around, but she would not go back. Please dedicate the video to Vera Jane. I am sure she would love the accolades while up in heaven. Thanks, WILLSTAR. So there it is. This gentleman's grandmother took a lead pipe to a Bigfoot and chased it off. Wow, that's crazy. Imagine that back in the 1950s, back then, in that area, well before all those farms and the development was going on. That was still a really swampy area. Even to this day, there's plenty of places for a Bigfoot/skunk ape to be, that's for sure. But back in the 1950s, just imagine how it was back then, how wild that was. Wow, that's crazy. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button for me. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And as always, where there is a WILLSTAR, there is a way. And we will talk to you guys later. Take care.